Hey everybody, my name is Ashley and today I'm going to show you how to create these 4 beautiful holiday cards using watercolor. So if you're interested, let's get started. For all of these designs, I cut out 4x6 pieces of paper using watercolor paper. So for the wreath, we're going to trace out a circle. I'm using the painter's tape, which will come in handy later. And I'm going to mix together green and brown. This is going to make the color for our leaves, and that's the first thing we're going to place down around the circle. To make these leaf shapes, you just want to press your brush down onto the paper and then lightly release pressure. And you're going to get a nice organic leaf shape. I like to create 2 to 3 leaves in a bundle and do this all around the circle. I'm using a small pointed brush, and this entire video I'll pretty much be switching between a really small pointed brush and a medium-sized brush. Okay, now we are going to mix up a light brown color that's going to become our twig or our branches. And again, we're just mixing up green and brown with a higher concentration of brown. Now we're going in with that very thin brush to create our branches. This really doesn't have to be perfect. The more imperfect, the better, because that's what nature looks like. And I'm just placing this between our leaves. Finally, our last color is going to be for the berries. I'm using a red color and plopping in 2 to 3 berries in a bundle all around our wreath. I think if you have a gold or bronze watercolor paint, that would also look really nice, but I like how festive the red and green looks. Now I'm going in with a blow dryer to make sure my paint is dry before adding some highlights with white acrylic paint. If you don't have acrylic, you can use gouache or even a really good white gel pen if you have one. But I have acrylic paint lying around, so I'm just going to use that. Finally, I'm just going to write Season's Greetings in the center. If you have stamps, you can also use stamps, whatever works for you. And there we go. Moving on to our second piece, which is this acorn and pine leaf design. We're going to start by blocking in some white and yellow to create these wintry cotton plant. And next we are going to create a light brown and a darker brown. For the light brown, I use some yellow, orange, and brown. Using the light brown, we're going to block in some rough shapes to become our pine cones. The pine cones don't have to look perfect, and there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing here. They're just kind of scribbles, and once we put in the darker brown color, it'll become more clear that this is going to become a pine cone. Alright, we're going to drop in some shadows using the darker brown color here. The shape of the pine cone is almost like a tree, but more rounded than the triangular shape of a tree. Now I'm going in with that very thin brush and picking up that brown paint to kind of create the stems of the cotton plant. I'm also going to create a little framework that's going to be a guide for our pine leaves. And I'm flipping over my card because it was kind of awkward to paint these upside down. Okay, for our pine leaves, we're going to create more of that green and brown color to create like a forest green. And we're going to create long, smooth strokes with our brush to resemble the pine leaves. I'm just going over our branches that we created with the brown so I know where to place the leaves. It's okay if this covers up some of the cotton plants that we made. That's why with watercolor we typically start with lighter colors first and then darker colors afterwards so that we can layer up darker colors on lighter colors. And now I'm doing the same thing on the top. Now I'm just taking a little bit of that brown and I'm adding some more sparse branches in the background. And finally, I want to create some snow, and I'm going to do that by taking some white acrylic paint and thinning it out with water. Now you want to grab an old toothbrush that you don't use and you are never going to use in your mouth, and you're going to get that wet and dip it into your paint. When you flick the toothbrush, you're going to create a splash. This is a really good effect for creating water at the bottom of a waterfall, creating stars in a galaxy, or in our case, creating some falling snow. So here I'm thinning out the paint just a bit more because you do want the paint to be quite loose and thin so you can flick it onto the paper. And there we go. We're going to finish off by drying off our painting with a blow dryer, or you can let it air dry before you remove the painter's tape. And voila, that is where you are going to put your greeting message. For our third painting, we are going to create a cup of hot cocoa. I'm sketching out my drawing using some reference photos that I just Googled, and I'm leaving room for our greeting at the bottom. For our mug, I decided to go with a blue color because I thought it would look really nice with the rest of the composition. We're going to have some green leaves and some red berries, so I thought blue would look really nice. So nothing too fancy here, I'm just blocking in a light shade of blue. Remember, if you go too dark, you can immediately lighten up that pigment with water and dab it off with a paper towel. Now our hot cocoa has some whipped cream on top, so we're going to use white and a little bit of yellow and a tiny bit of brown to create like a cream color on top. And for our shadow, we're going to use just a little bit more of that brown and yellow. We're going to pop that into any places where you'd see shadow to create some depth and dimension. Next, we're creating the color of the cinnamon stick, which is yellow, yellow-orange, and some brown. And we're going to add shadows to that with also a darker color of brown. And again, I'm really just using my pointed brush for all of these paintings and a small fine brush for details. Next, we're going to create an even darker brown color for our star anise, which is sitting on top of our whipped cream. And at the bottom of our mug, we're going to have a couple of leaves with cranberries. And we're creating that same forest green color using green and brown. And the technique here is very similar to our pine leaves. We're just using straight, smooth strokes to get our leaf shape. And now we're just going to go in with some red and block in our cranberries. Just adding another layer of paint here to really brighten up the color and deepen it. So our first layer of paint is on. Now we're going to go in and create some details. I'm using that brown color to create some detail in the leaves. And we're also going to create some speckles on top of our whipped cream. This could be cinnamon, it could be cocoa, it could even be chocolate shavings. Just make sure you concentrate the most of it at the top, since that is how gravity would distribute our toppings in real life. We're going in with a deeper shade of our blue to create some shadow. Things that are far away are typically going to be in shadow. So the edges of our mug I'm going to make a little bit darker. And don't forget to bring this onto the handle as well. I'm taking a very light, cool-toned gray color to create shadow on the bottom of our mug. We're also going to take that dark brown color and use it to create our cranberry stem. Nothing fancy here, just some lines to connect our circles. So to create highlight, I'm going to use our white acrylic paint. Again, you can use gouache. You could even use gel pen. I decided to go with a snowflake design for our mug. And since the mug is a curved surface, just remember that your design is not going to look perfectly symmetrical. Otherwise, it might look a little flat and two-dimensional, which is not what we want. So you can see my snowflakes are not perfectly symmetrical. They're not even super detailed, but that's because the farther things are away from you, the less clear they are going to be to our eyes. So it's okay if it doesn't look perfect. I'm also going to create some highlights on the cranberries. That could also be interpreted as frost or some glistening on the cranberries, and I'm adding it to our leaves as well. I really like the highlight. I think it brings it all together and kind of looks like frost or snow. And there's our finished product. I think this one's my favorite. What do you think? For our last design, we're going to create some Christmas lights. I decided to do the lights hanging from two separate strands on our page, and I'm just tracing out where I want each bulb to hang. The light bulb is kind of like an egg shape. So in retrospect, I would tend to work from left to right, just so that the paint doesn't get smudged by your hand, or right to left if you're left-handed. But I decided to start with red, and then I ended up placing the red in the middle of the painting. And the main method for creating these twinkly lights is to block in a light shade and then go in with some darker details at the top and at the bottom. You could honestly pick whatever colors that you like best. I decided to go with rainbow colors for this painting. So I was having a little bit of trouble with getting the shading right with the green. So you saw me kind of blotting and using the blow dryer, but it looked kind of splotchy. so I decided to move on to the purple while the green was drying and then come back to it. So once my green has dried, I was able to blend the colors out a little bit better using a darker green color and water to blend. Now we're going to create a gold color using yellow, orange, and brown to create the fixture on the top of the Christmas bulb. I also wanted to create a little bit of light emanating from each bulb. So you want to place down some water onto the page and then lightly bring in the color of the bulb. Just make sure that the color is very thin and desaturated. So again, the paper is wetted with water, and then you drop in some very desaturated paint to get a nice glow. Now I'm using a brown color to outline the top of our bulb. And using a dark brown, almost black color to create our string. Then I'm going to use a gray or a very desaturated black and create the shadow of the string. Make sure your painting is dry, and then you can erase any of your pencil marks. Now you see me trying to create some highlight using a white gel pen, but it wasn't really bright enough, so I decided to go in with the white acrylic paint. And I'm dotting this mainly in the center of the bulb. And there we go. So to create the Christmas card, you can take any colored paper you have, craft paper, cardstock. I had this tan drawing paper lying around, so I decided to use that. And I cut it to the size 6.5 by 9 for my 4x6 paintings. So this is very self-explanatory, but you can use double-sided tape, you can use glue to affix your painting to your desired card. And there we go, this is our finished product. Hopefully you decide to give these paintings a go. It's really nothing too complicated once you get going and start putting your paintbrush to paper. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.